Welcome to TOMMO'S Race CHINWAG, your favourite Formula 1 podcast produced by a British biased bloke with a massive Swede full of very questionable wheel knowledge. Broadcast live on YouTube and after the fact on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We have a good old natter about each and every Grand Prix of the season. My name's Tommo, let's talk about it. Welcome everyone to my 2025 Japanese Grand Prix post-race CHINWAG. My name, of course, is Tommo. His name is Minton. He joins us for the start of the stream. I'm not sure how long he'll stick around. It's a beautiful sunny day in jolly old England. He's been lapping it up in a lovely little sunspot in the bedroom, haven't you, mate? And he certainly didn't wake up for the Grand Prix this morning. Part of me wishes I didn't either, to be honest. Yeah, exactly that, mate. It was, look, obviously I'll put a poll in the live chat if you're joining live on YouTube. Thank you for coming along. I appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, sunny day in England, I know. It's been crazy. Already got the race rating poll up because, you know, when it's an absolute banger, we can start with, you know, a 10, a 9, a 8, I can't count, or a 7 or lower. When it's one of these, you start with a 1, 2, 3, 4 or higher. And currently, 24% of you gave this a 1 out of 10, 34% of you gave it a 2, 31% gave you it a 3, and 11% of you are very easily pleased. You know what? 11% of you are actual Formula 1 drivers because it seems that, you know, Charles had a bit of a boring time, but some of them really enjoyed it. I think the top three, they were so locked in, but it just goes to show, doesn't it? Just because the drivers are enjoying the track doesn't mean we are enjoying the spectacle as fans, ultimately. So, yes. I mean, what can I say? It's a 2 for me. It's a 2. Quali was good. Not that was part of the race, but I kind of take that into my own personal kind of interpretation of the whole weekend. Quali was very tight and close. And we did have the Lando on the grass moment alongside Max, which was something that kind of almost woke me up. Because I'm not going to lie, I had this on, I switched it on about 5:45 on the phone next to bed while I'm a kip. He's there laying in the middle because Minton sleeps in the bed because, of course, he does, he's spoiled. And I'm kind of going in and out. And then that happens, I'm like, and then Lando falls back because actually he ended up losing a bunch of time because he almost lost it completely on the grass. And then I kind of almost went back to sleep again. So, yes. You didn't have to get up for this one. Highlight reel will do plenty. And, I mean, there's not really any spoilers by the result. Max Verstappen took the win. Max Verstappen around Suzuka. There are things. There's fish. There's chips. You know? There's things that just go together. There's Minton and ham. There are many combinations in life that just go together. Max Verstappen and Suzuka in the Mie Prefecture of Japan turns out to be one of those combinations that absolutely slaps day in, day out. And also, this is one of those CHINWAGs where, because typically the post-race CHINWAG does better viewership-wise than the pre-race. I've got a funny feeling we might be struggling for that one this time out. Because the pre-race did like 43k views, which is really good, really good. And thank you for watching the pre-race CHINWAGs. We're going to struggle with this one. Okay, we're going to struggle. But make sure you get in the comments down below. We've got to try and beat 43k views on this post-race. Otherwise, wow, that's horrific. And thank you, Adonis and Clinton. I'll get to your super chat shortly. I just want to get through a bit more of the show and then we'll slap out some super chats. Chat around the super chats. So, yeah. Race rating out of 10, you're probably averaging out about probably a 2. You're averaging at about 2. And I agree. It stunk. Not gonna lie. Coverage could have been way better also. You know what? The problem is, Manuel, I do feel for the broadcasters in this instance. Doesn't matter who it is, Sky, F1, DAZN, Viaplay, whoever. Right? When you've got a race like that that's not really giving you much, it's tough. It's a tough job. Oh, look, this is what Minton likes to do, by the way. When he's tired, he likes to try and rest on the peak of my cap. Bless him. Do you want to go back to the sunspot? I think he does. I think he's had his time on the stream. Say goodbye to your adoring fans. My beautiful sausage dog. Look at him. Right, go on then. Off you pop. Go on, Sam. Go find some sun. I'll leave the door ajar just in case he wants to come back in. Happy days. Right, okay. Let's start, of course, by reflecting on qualifying. We did do a post-quali stream, so I'm just going to be super succinct with this. Of course, Max put it pole ahead of the two McLarens and Charles Leclerc. Typically, I don't do post-quali streams, but I wanted to have a look at the Yuki Tsunoda, Max Verstappen difference yesterday. And that lined us up nicely for today. And in terms of the average quali head-to-heads, again, to briefly go over that, Verstappen-Tsunoda is the biggest average gap. There is only one gap, representative of a 0.498. I also did get something wrong in the... I forgot to look at Alonso's quickest lap in Q1. I only looked at Alonso's first lap because I only looked at Stroll's first lap, but Stroll messed up his second lap. But that shouldn't take away from Alonso's improvement. So actually, that Aston Martin average shoots right up because the fact that Stroll couldn't improve, it was like almost a second a gap between Lance and Fernando. You can say it isn't fair all you like, but this is the way I'm doing it. So those are the average gaps that we're going to keep an eye on over the course of the year. But as for the race, well, not much change. Because, I mean, these are the race results, okay? And these are the quali results. So you can see, top 10-wise, only one change in position. Lewis Hamilton ahead of Isaac Hadjar. Lewis kind of out of position in qualifying, so you would expect that. A bit more in the back, but still. What, Hulkenberg didn't change, Ocon didn't change, Stroll didn't change. This kind of says a lot. The not being able to overtake, you were... Andrea Stella was saying afterwards, you needed about 8/10 in terms of lap time advantage to be able to get a move done, to overcome the dirty air, to overcome the fact that everyone was pushing flat out because we had the C1 to C3 compound range, the hardest compound range on a newly surfaced Suzuka. In hindsight, that was a mistake. If they'd have bumped it to the C2, C3, C4, we probably would have seen some two stops. And we probably would have seen, again, look, everyone pushing flat out, it's all well and good, but sometimes those management races does give us something, does give us more, overtaking more wheel to wheel. It kind of does. It's a fine line, isn't it? And I just feel like in this instance, and we've seen it with many tracks before, right? Suzuka is an all-timer in terms of a circuit in isolation. Spa is an all-timer in terms of a circuit in isolation. Mugello, I love Mugello, not that it's on the calendar anymore, but a great chat. But around all these fantastic circuits for not necessarily F1 racing, but just motorsport in general, we do see some absolute stinkers every now and then. And the conditions were such that not much happened. They all kept it clean lap one. And Max stayed ahead. He had a bit more of a damp on the inside, which, again, kind of consolidated that P1 position because sometimes you can get a run up obviously on the inside at Suzuka, but I think that moisture really did help kind of solidify the positions at the start, and Max took the win. Max took the win in impressive style. 2 Papaya F1 cars in his mirrors the entire Grand Prix. It was like 1.5 seconds back to Norris and 1.5 again to Piastri, roughly on average, probably over the course of the entire Grand Prix. Very, very close, but nothing happened. For there to be 3 seconds split in the top 3 and it to be a 2 out of 10 race is pretty crazy. It's very Monaco-esque. Someone said it. Someone said it in the live chat before we even went live. Who said it in the live chat? I want to find it. Who said it? Yes, Patrick Van Stocken. Up the Patrick. Love you, Patrick. Appreciate your support. Monaco-esque. It was very Monaco-esque to have such a small gap, but no way of getting ahead. And we'll talk about potential McLaren swaps, potential Lando undercuts as we go team by team. I think my internet just dropped. I'm going to carry on what I was saying. Top 10 didn't change. Isaac Hadjar, Lewis Hamilton swap positions. Boom. Otherwise, Fernando Alonso once again out of the points. Nil points for Fernando after 3 Grand Prix. Yeah, that was definitely an internet error. That wasn't a weird stream glitch error. So there you go. We're good. We're cooking. So those are the race results. Driver standings. Where are we sitting after 3 of 24 weekends? Lando Norris does lead, but just by a single point over Max Verstappen. Talk about damage limitation. Max is doing a hell of a job at that. Oscar Piastri 49, so 12 points back from Max. George Russell 45. Kimi Antonelli 30, Leclerc 20, Albon still 18 points, still ahead of Lewis Hamilton up the Alex Gabodzan, doing a phenomenal job in that Williams. 3-point scoring finishes in a row. We love to see it. Esteban Ocon and Lance Stroll both on 10 points. Hulkenberg, Behrman, Hadjar obviously points for the first time so far this season somehow because he's been driving very well, but it's not been great strategy calls from Racing Bull's point of view. Yuki 3 points. Carlos Sainz 1, and then Gasly, Alonso, Lawson, Doohan, Bortoleto. Of course, Yuki scored those points in the Racing Bulls. So Racing Bulls get the points, get those 3 points, not Red Bull, even though Yuki now drives for Red Bull. That's kind of how it works. So those are the driver standings. So much to play for. So many upgrades still in the pipeline. We know Red Bull have got something planned for, I want to say, Imola. Is it round 7? They've got an upgrade planned. And then round 9 is the flexi wing change. I'm sure McLaren and Ferrari are going to be bringing something as well. There's a lot to play for. And as much as this race stunk, at least it's a triple header, which means we can kind of forget about this quite quickly and move swiftly on to Bahrain this weekend. It is Bahrain, isn't it? Yeah, it is. And then the constructors. McLaren, of course, consolidate their position, 111 points up ahead. Mercedes on 75, Red Bull 61, Ferrari, who are in blue because I forgot to update the colour, because of course I did, are on 35. Williams in red are on 19. Alex Albon wishes, because you know he's a childhood Ferrari fan. Haas 15, Aston Martin 10. Racing Bulls are also in green because I forgot. Okay, they're on 7. And Sauber on 6, Alpine on nil point. That is what we coin as a low moment. It happens, okay? It happens. No F2 this weekend. Doesn't happen in Japan. No F2 round in Suzuka, which is a shame. It'd be a really good track, I think, for F2. I'd like to see F2 in... But I get it from a logistics point of view. It's a thing, right? It happens. It happens. So no F2. Bangers and clangers. Quick rewind, quick refresh. I cooked. I feel like I cooked here. I predicted Max to win the race. He did exactly that. Banger drive Yuki, no. Clanger drive Jack. Look, he might not get the overall clanger vote. Maybe he will. But obviously having a shunt like he did in FP2, not good. His race actually was okay. Not amazing, but given the lack of preparation, it was okay. But to have a shunt like that and completely write off your car, and we can again address how much of that was the team's fault and how much of that was Jack's fault. Ultimately, he has to be up there for clangers. So, come on, you can't say Doohan didn't clang at this weekend's Japanese Grand Prix after that shunt. That's absolutely a clanger move, I'm afraid. Red Bull Racing banger team. I'm giving myself half a point for that. An Alpine clanger team, I'm putting them up there as well. I'm giving myself a point for that. We can debate the merits of these points. At the end of the day, I did way better than you lot. I'll give you a point for Alpine. I'll give you half a point for McLaren, because McLaren kind of banged, but also they kind of clanged as well. But clanger Yuki, no. Banger Yuki, no. Oscar race winner, no. So I win, okay? I win. Frauds, the lot of you, all right? Frauds. The lot of you. All 1,008 of you. Frauds. Okay, right. Let's have a little super chat break. Thank you all for again. You really don't have to super chat, honestly. Like, I'm more than comfortable with these streams with no super chats, but if you do get involved, then I really do appreciate it. And thank you. It goes towards Minton's treats, because we got to keep Minton fresh and healthy. He's getting that little grey beard in. You know, he's 6 going on 7 now. He's like middle-aged, so we need to keep him as fresh and fit as a fiddle. Thank you, Adonis, for the super chat. Man, can they bring back the Q2 tyre rule? It would force more mixed up strategy. My sleep schedule is off all week. I think that's a bit of an overcorrection, Adonis. I'm not going to lie. I think the Q2 tyre rule, I'm not sure about that. Look, I know sleep schedules were messed up and it was a boring race, but at the end of the day, I do think having the C2 to C4 range of tyres would have made for a better Grand Prix. I do believe that. George has said that after. He's not the only one, but obviously he's GPDA director, so he's going to, he was talking about toilet facilities, wasn't he, this weekend, about there's not enough at Suzuka for the driver. So George, he just does everything, What can't that man do? So I think it was just the wrong compound range, honestly. Given the fact that given the resurfacing of the track was always going to mean that the tyres are going to get less battered. It should be different in Bahrain, of course, just given the, obviously you're in the desert as well, right? So, and it's just a completely different type of track. I think, it's food for thought for future years, because you can go too much. Would the C3 to C5 would have been inappropriate completely, and obviously you got the C6 this year, but that's only going to be used in Monaco because of the specific characteristics of that track. So I just think ultimately the clang was the decision to do C1 to C3 instead of C2 to C4. I think that would have made all the difference. Personally, I think that would have been enough. Thank you, Clinton, for the super chat. F1 fans be like, we want old school tracks, less DRS and tyres. Drivers can push on. F1 fans, when they get that, wow, boring race. Yeah, look, at the end of the day, right, whether or not the drivers are fully pushing, like, what would you choose as a fan watching? Okay, in an idealistic world, we want drivers pushing 100% and loads of overtakes and wheel-to-wheel racing and drama and rivalries and all this, right? And around the best tracks in the world. That's in an idealistic world what we want. But ultimately, again, the top three were pushing flat out. In terms of their focus, their locked-inness was off the scale, flying. But it was boring for us. So you have to give a little bit. Suzuka's great. Again, I think wrong tyre compounds for this track. I think that would have been enough to make it not necessarily an absolute, but I think Suzuka, unless it rains around a track like Suzuka, it's never going to be this overtaking fest. I think in standard regular conditions, which is what we eventually got, I know it was a little bit damp at the start, a circuit like Suzuka, challenges these drivers in a different way. We've got 24 races. Not every single race has to be this overtaking fest. And a lot of it was done in qualifying, and that's where, Max paid dividends and pulled out a stonking lap, as well as kind of relying on the McLaren boys to not maximise their package. So, I think that you can't have it all. And everything that could have gone wrong from an entertainment point of view in this race did in the end. We came close with Red Bull fumbling that pit stop for Max and Lando almost sneaking in. That would have been interesting. But that was kind of it. That moment was gone quite quickly. But thank you, Clinton, for the super chat. Thank you, Vince. Can't believe no one's talking about the failures of FIA's 2022 regs, which aim to reduce dirty air, making overtaking easier. Clear it failed. So I think, Vince, the dirty air has got worse. It was always going to get worse. You have, 22, 23, 24. Now we're in 25, so you've had 3 full years of teams adding downforce, and typically the more you add downforce, the more it creates turbulent, dirty air. So I think you can definitely argue that the FIA should have done more to evolve these rules, because I think the dirty air, the wheel-to-wheel racing we were getting from Max and Charles at 22 was amazing. And then Max kind of settled in and the Ferraris fell away. And it's kind of like we had a really spread out grid in 22, but we had really clean air coming out of these cars. Now we've got a really condensed grid, but much dirtier air coming out of these cars. And it kind of one offsets the other. Ideally, you have the new rules for 22, and then halfway through 22, the FIA looks at what innovations the teams are bringing, and then makes a couple of little tweaks just to hold back the dirty air. And then same midway through the next season, makes a couple of little tweaks just to hold back the dirty air. I don't know, maybe that's a solution. Open wheel racing cars are going to chuck out a bunch of dirty air. Open wheel racing cars with massive wangs on them, okay, front and back, going to chuck out loads of dirty air. Unless you, again, specifically design around it, massively simplify the designs, which again, you look like the more kind of traditional old-fashioned, like 80s, 90s F1 cars. I mean, some of them were crazy with triple wings on them and massive air boxes that sat about 20 foot above the car. But simplify, you would hope, that's where I guess the active aero is going to be really interesting in 26. Is the active aero going to be enough to keep dirty air from ultimately spoiling the wheel-to-wheel racing spectacle. Because if you combine the field spread we have now with the aerodynamic regulations at the start of 2022, when the dirty air was way less dirty, okay, we're cooking. But that's not the case. And maybe add a bit of the unreliability we got in 2022 as well, because all of these cars are too reliable. None of them broke down. Okay? None of them broke down. It's one of like, I swear before like 22, there was only like a handful of races ever that every single driver finished. And now it's like, it's just normal. Everyone finished. It happened. Lance pitted twice, fine. That's why I was so far off the back, but everyone finished. So I think to say it failed is partially correct, partially incorrect. But I see where you're coming from, Vince. I do. I thank you, Isaac, as well. Don't worry, guys. In Bahrain, Tommo ain't touching us. Fighting talk, Isaac. We'll see. We'll see, Isaac. We'll see. But I feel like in the head-to-head, I'm clear now. And I think it's going to stay that way. So good luck, Isaac, with that. And thank you, Karthik, as well. Oscar is McLaren's future. He has that X factor. Ooh. Oscar is McLaren's future. We'll get on to the McLaren boys. We'll go team by team, because I think there's a lot to be spoken about. I'm going to somehow, even though it's a stinker Grand Prix, I've already been talking for 23 minutes, and I'm going to find a way of talking for another hour probably. So lock in, all right? Lock in. Actually, before I want a little drink break, and I have a message from you, from me, of the past. Enjoying this podcast, please give it a good rating. 5 stars would be lovely. A comment, engage however you can. It helps get the CHINWAG out to the world. What a handsome young man that was. Right, okay, so bangers and clangers. Let's get into it, shall we? Banger drive from this weekend's Japanese Grand Prix. Now, there are a number of excellent candidates for this, I think. Obviously Max, okay, putting it on pole, which ended up being the difference maker here. And then keeping ahead, keeping the 2 McLarens behind him. Even when Red Bull gave him a bit of a dodgy pit stop, he still managed to stay ahead. Got the job done, won. Happy days. You've got Ollie Behrman, really good job in the Haas to kind of maximise, given, wasn't particularly happy with the car in practice, but got to Q3, stayed in P10, great result for him. I mean, Alex, 3-point scoring finishes in a row now in terms of main Grand Prix. Q3, out-qualified stance again. It was a bit of a diva on the radio, not going to lie. If I was Alex's race engineer, I'd have probably given him one of them like, you do your job, we'll do ours, all right? Get your head down, Alex, and shut up. Great Grand Prix. Isaac Hadjar, P7 again in qualifying. Maximised the race. Of course, Lewis got past him, but I mean, he did the job to get ahead of Lewis in qualifying in the first place, and Lewis is in a Ferrari, so of course. They're kind of the main candidates for me. Look, I've given it to Isaac Hadjar, okay? You might be like, oh, Max. Okay, Max was amazing, of course. But also you can't tell me Isaac doesn't deserve it, okay? Because Isaac's a rookie, never raced around Suzuka before, P7 in qualifying, whilst having his balls in a less than ideal situation. Any fellow ball carriers out there will testify that can be quite uncomfortable, let alone when you're putting 5G around Suzuka. To qualify the way he did, and then to execute a perfect race. As a rookie who's come in, and all this talk around Red Bull, blah, 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 racing balls, outperforms Lawson, outqualifies Lawson in qualifying. Fantastic race, executes perfectly. First points in F1. Max, you were great, but I'm giving it to Isaac. He well deserves it. He well deserves it. Chuff for him, actually. He's doing a fantastic job, is Isaac. Especially, again, bouncing back after Australia, which was such a gut punch for him. To deliver a performance like he did in Suzuka, he should be incredibly proud of himself. He smashed it. And these rookies aren't playing. You're right, Marcus. These rookies are not playing. They're not playing, right? A lot of you called me crazy in my preseason predictions for putting Bortoletto, predicting him ahead of Hulkenberg, Behrman ahead of Ocon. These rookies are not playing. They're here. They're quick. They are quick. And once they get on top of these Pirellis, that's why Isaac managed the race and was ahead of Albon fairly comfortably in the end. Yeah, I'm not sure what... it is Isaac, isn't it? Isaac says Isaac. So I always try and match what the drivers say their actual name is because, surely if anyone knows how your name is pronounced, it's the person with that name. But, I mean, maybe that's controversial. So I've given Banger Driver to Isaac Hadjar. 1,226 of you have voted. Now, I did post this poll a little bit later than I would have liked, but also when it's a good race, we go over 2k votes. But to be honest, if you didn't vote on this one, I don't blame you, all right? It's not really worth the time because it was such a howler of a race. However, we still have bangers and clangers to hand out, okay? And your banger driver from this weekend's 2025 Japanese Grand Prix is, of course, Max Verstappen. 72% of the votes. It was. Max didn't put a foot wrong. Isaac didn't put a foot wrong. But Max didn't have his balls crushed in qualifying. So, and he's not a rookie. So that was the differentiating factor for me. But Max, you can have that. Oh dear. 16% of you were fellow Hadjar appreciators though. Appreciate that. Yeah, but the ball tags, exactly. 7% Antonelli. Again, Kimi really struggled in practice, FP2 and 3 in particular, but was able to recover and put in a really good performance and not finish that far behind Russell either, actually. Really, really strong. And then Ollie Behrman, 3% of the vote as well. Love it. Clanger driver, for me, it was always going to be between two. It was going to be between Doohan and Stroll. I've gone with Stroll. I think, look, obviously the accident in FP2, we'll go into the details again, but it was in part Doohan's fault, of course. However, Lance pitted twice, and that's why he finished at the back, but obviously he qualified last. He also didn't make the same strategy as Doohan work because they both started on softs, Doohan and Stroll. Lance came in on lap 10 to get the softs off and put hard on till the end. Pause. Whereas Doohan went, I think, to lap 16 and made that one-stop work, made that soft to hard work. Doohan was the proof that the one-stop could be done, and actually Doohan gained position. Lance couldn't make it work, had to pit again, and finished last. So, qualifying last, finishing last, didn't make a strategy that could work, because Doohan proved it. I'm going Lance last. Classic Lance. Great performances, first three, Australia, China Sprint, and feature, decent as well. And it all goes wrong. I mean, that's just Lance, unfortunately. We've seen this all far too often. Hopefully he can bounce back quickly because all too often it's been, a couple of decent performances and then just clanger after clanger for a while until he comes back. Hopefully this is a one-off because Lance is in the sport. He's going to be in the sport for a while and he's clearly capable of doing something, but seeing him struggle is just, it's just beating the same drum again, isn't it? I've gone Lance. You, for your clanger driver, have also gone Lance. 55% of the vote. 13% for Liam Lawson, who, qualifying obviously wasn't amazing. He was 0.131 off of Hadjar in Q2, which was enough for him to not get through and Hadjar to get through. And did out-qualify Sonoda technically, but then lost position to Yuki at the start. And they tried to go long. There's a few drivers, Science, Ocon, Lawson. They tried to extend at the start and were hoping for a safety car, essentially. That never came. So then it all kind of went Pete Song and they finished right at the back. Science, again, 8%. Carlos was actually quite happy, speaking after the race. He was quite happy with how his pace was. It was just, again, they went to extend that first stint to hope for a safety car and it never came. So And 6% Lando Norris, which I thought was quite interesting for clanger driver. To qualify second ahead of your teammate, to finish second ahead of your teammate, and get clanger drive is a choice that 6% of you made. We'll talk about McLaren. We'll talk about it. Oh, yeah, and he had a fine, didn't he? Because he needed a dump. Well, didn't he have a dodgy tummy, didn't he? Carlos. And he wasn't there for the national anthem. So he had to pay 10k. That's an expensive poo. Assuming it was a poo anyway. Oh, vamos. Happens to the best of us, mate. Thank you, Michael, by the way, for the super chat. In fairness to Lance, I also sometimes underperform, going from soft to hard depending on the day. Wow, Michael. I hope your significant other isn't in the chat, mate. Because anyway, banger team. There wasn't a particular team that really stood out, because you could always, Max did an amazing job, and Red Bull, Max decided the garage did an amazing job, giving him the car to do what he did as well, because of course you have to also give the team some plaudits for that. But then obviously Yuki struggled and didn't get out of Q2 and finished 12th. So I've gone Mercedes. I feel like George, again, it wasn't perfect. Like George couldn't maximise Q3. He felt like he probably should have qualified ahead of Charles Leclerc, but he didn't, and kind of ended up stuck behind Leclerc. But in terms of combined team result, Antonelli did a good job in the race. George had a quiet race, and again we saw like everyone was struggling to overtake, so I can't really have a pop at George for not being able to overtake Charles. I think probably Mercedes, I would say, extracted the closest to the ceiling that they could this weekend from both of their cars. That's probably what I'd say. More so than McLaren, more so than Red Bull. Because I think McLaren did miss a trick. How much of that is drivers, how much of that is team is hard to quantify exactly, but I'm probably going to say, yeah, I mean, there was no clear banger, I guess. And you agree, actually, because you also went Mercedes with 38% of the vote. But 26% of you went McLaren, 21% of you went Red Bull, and 8% of you went Racing Bulls. So a fairly broad, stretch of teams there. So no clear winner on banger team. And then as for clanger team, I'm going with Alpine. I'm saying Alpine for a couple of reasons. Bad pit stop for Pierre in the race really did cost him. Points might have been a stretch, but cost him big time. They do have a degree of responsibility in the Jack Doohan FP2 situation, as far as I'm concerned. That's basically it. No points. That's kind of it. I guess, I don't know. I feel like the Alpine is quicker than the results. They should be on the fringe of points, and they're not. I'm saying Alpine. Not a clear one for me. I'm saying Alpine. You actually said McLaren, which is kind of crazy. 28% of you went McLaren for clanger, which a 2-3 context, they did have the quickest car, I think, this weekend. I do believe that. Around Suzuka, I think even quicker than Max and the Red Bull was the McLaren thing, but they didn't maximise qualifying and therefore couldn't beat Max in the race. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of get it from both sides. They got 26% of the banger team vote and they got 28% of the clanger team vote. But there you go. The duality of human. 27% Sauber just behind McLaren. Yeah, Nico was caught in... They were both caught in traffic. Bortoletto lost position to Ocon at the start. They didn't really do anything, did they, Sauber? So they're also a pretty good suggestion. 23% of you went Alpine. 16% of you went Aston Martin. So, totals so far. We're running totals of banger clanger votes. So for me, I've got 1 banger drive for Antonelli, Ocon and Hadjar. Clanger drive 2 for Lawson, 1 for Stroll. Banger team 2 for Mercedes, 1 for Haas. And clanger team, 1 Haas, 1 Ferrari, 1 Alpine. That's mine. Yours, Antonelli, Piastri, Verstappen for banger. 2 Lawson, 1 Stroll for clanger, same as me. 2 Mercedes, 1 Haas is banger, same as me. Is it? Wait, that's not right, is it? Oh, no, it is right. I second guess myself because there's always a long moment, but it turns out it wasn't. Clanger team, Ferrari, Racing Bulls, and McLaren. Your votes. Cool. Excellent. Lovely. Jubbly. Right, before we go team by team, I want to have a drink. Lovely jubbly. Right, okay. Team by team, let's go. No rest for the wicked. Let's start with Sauber because they're the first graphic that pops up. No particular order. So in qualifying, they weren't that far off. But P16, P17, 16 thousandths, I think Hulkenberg was off of Lawson in qualifying. So the one that pace the Sauber, it's hard to just stuck in traffic. You can't really do anything. So it's hard to make any broad. They're certainly not hanging off the back of the pack like they were last year. So Sauber are somewhat competitive and probably on a good day can get points, but I don't think those days are going to come very often. They're going to have to rely on a few DNFs and some craziness going on. I think ultimately Bortoletto's given a really good account of himself over a lap. Again, lost position to Ocon at the start, but yeah, very little to say on Sauber, so I'm not going to waste your time. Alpine, a bit more interesting. So, to clarify the Jack doing FP2 position, so Jack doing in the simulator, which of course was his preparation before this weekend's Japanese Grand Prix, going through turn 1 was to not manually switch the DRS off. So this is what he'd been doing in the sim. He obviously didn't race FP1 because Ryo Hirakawa was in the car. And then when he jumped in for FP2, Jack's first push lap, he did with DRS open through turn 1. But he didn't turn in quite as aggressively, and he didn't lose it, and he went round and carried on. It wasn't highlighted to him that he shouldn't be doing this. Now, obviously, Jack needs to take a significant chunk of the responsibility, of course, because everyone else was mainly switching the DRS off. But you would expect surely, like something as... Because there's not many circuits where there's typically you engage the brake or you lift off the throttle significantly and it automatically turns the DRS off. This is a corner where it's everyone manually turns it off, right? You see the little finger, boom. So for the team to not highlight this, when Gasly's doing it that way as well, by the way, to not even highlight it, and then Jack goes out, does it again. So again, it was a mistake, but it wasn't a mistake. Jack wasn't intending. There was no part of Jack's mind that was going to switch the DRS off because he believed it was fine to do so. Now, there was an article from the race going into a bit more detail about it, and they're saying that Jack did actually have a new engineering team for this weekend. I think his race engineers moved to Gasly's side of the garage, and Jack's old performance engineer is now his race engineer, I want to say. So I don't think that's helped. I think, again, not giving him FP1 didn't help, of course. Ryo Hirakawa was in the car. We obviously understand, Toyota, they're going to make that happen. So, yeah, I don't know if it's like naivety or just overlooking something. A combination, when you're working with a rookie, Jack's not raced around Suzuka before. There's definitely culpability on both sides, 100%. Like, you can't 100% put this on Jack. You can't 100% put this on the team. There's definitely culpability on both sides. So that's not good. Obviously, massive damage bill. But fair play to the team for fixing the car and getting it ready. And again, in the Grand Prix, let down Pierre with the pit stop. I'm not sure how long... Does anyone know? I don't know off the top of my head how long Gasly's pit stop was. I know it was bad. I can't remember exactly how long it was. But so that's not good. Jack made it work with a soft. So actually, Jack sounded afterwards pretty satisfied with his Grand Prix. Obviously, those images, when there's a crash like that sudden a spin, the way that car unloaded in qualifying reminded me of, remember when George Russell at Imola spun and hit Bottas? And you know when they're there and he just goes bang, like straight into the side. That's a terrifying. I'm not being funny. If Bottas didn't have his halo, that probably ripped his head off. Like, it was crazy. And like how sudden and violent that switch was. And it was like 185 miles an hour Jack was doing going into turn one. Again, DRS off on purpose. Awful. 4.4, yeah. I mean, 4.4 is like, obviously it's like double what it should be, ultimately. Which was enough to kind of make the difference and hurt Pierre's race. So, yeah, just... you wonder, I'm sure there is something coming, because obviously they made a big jump kind of middle of last season when David Sanchez bought his first kind of his own upgrade to the car. I want to see Gasly. I feel like Gasly's got it in him to fight towards the front. I do. And I mean, Doohan, who knows, right? I think I hope Doohan's going to get at least half the season to prove himself. If you're going to pull him, give him 12 races and then give Franco the other 12, and then you can got a direct head-to-head comparison. At least do that. That's what I'd say. Jack's one lap pace has been good, but yeah, obviously a mistake like that is not going to help his. Was it 50G? Yeah, I mean it looked as violent an impact as Max's Silverstone one in 21, right? As far as I'm concerned, it's crazy. Clinton, thank you again for the super chat. Appreciate it. Alpine not telling Doohan to turn off the DRS is a very expensive way to get an excuse to fire him, but I guess they really want Colapinto. I mean, look, I don't think Colapinto's bringing, like, you know, we've heard numbers of like 10 million, blah, blah, blah. Like, that was a $1 million plus crash, wasn't it, Doohan? Like, whole new chassis, like, basically almost everything was destroyed. So, you know, I don't know. I know Flavio's got, you know, precedent, but I don't know. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I just think it's incompetence. Don't attribute to malice what you can attribute to stupidity. And I think this is just that example of, not stupidity, of course, just overlooking something. And again, new engineering team for Jack this weekend, I think has really worked against him. I thought the lack of FP1 would hurt him this weekend. Turns out I was more right than ever. Right, next Ferrari. Ferrari. Oh, man. You know what? Like, Charles was saying after the race, like, he couldn't have done anything more. He kind of maximised the Grand Prix. And in qualifying, you know, comfortably ahead of Lewis by a few tenths, ahead of George Russell as well. I think Charles actually should get some plaudits for having one of the stronger weekends out of anyone. Because again, what did Charles do wrong? Like, that car just on pace, he finished like 13 seconds behind Oscar Piastri. And yeah, he said post-race, like, yeah, there's nothing more really I could have done. We're just kind of lacking pace. Lewis is having his own struggles. And I think part of it as well is obviously running that car a little bit higher. Because obviously they got burnt so badly. It's pretty embarrassing what happened in China, so that's not helped. But yeah, Charles just wasn't as boring a race as anyone. You know, I reckon George was quicker in the Mercedes, but not by 8 tenths. And that's, again, roughly what you need to be able to actually get a move done and get close enough to get a move done. So, yeah. Quali meant everything is actually exactly Central 99. Quali meant everything this time out. Charles maximised qualifying and maximised the race. P4, it probably slower than the Mercedes on the day as a package, but Charles managed to get the work done. And then, yeah, Lewis is talking about some issue with the car. And again, whether it's ride height, you know, it's costing them like a tenth a lap. And they're hoping for a fix. Now, I don't know if that's specific to ride height or something else. He quantified it as a tenth per lap. Bloody hay fever's getting in my eyes. And yeah, it's been a underwhelming start to the season from Ferrari. A very disappointing start to the season from Ferrari, given what Charles scored everyone from like mid-season onwards last year. And now they're just not they're like fourth quickest car probably this weekend. Again, it changes by weekend, but I think the McLarens were the quickest cars this weekend, followed by Max in his Red Bull, followed by Mercedes, followed by Ferrari. That's what I think. around Suzuka, and that will change in Bahrain, and that will change in Saudi, etc., etc. But yeah, just very underwhelming start to the season from Ferrari. Shame, real shame, because I really did think that this was Charles' time to win a title. I really did, and like I know there's a long way to go, but it's hard. It's hard to look at this with any degree of any positivity that is actually going to happen this year. Yeah, it's not good. And yeah, of course, Daniel, I think Lewis also, he isn't maximising the car. I mean, he's been in a Mercedes for as long as he has. It's going to take more than 3 weekends for him to really be maximising the car in the same way that Charles Leclerc can. So that's to be expected. If Charles was, right up there fighting for wins, and maybe in China without the damage he could have been, maybe, then I'd be much more positive about not just Charles but Lewis's chances, because Lewis is always going to take a bit of time to get up to speed relative to Charles. That's always going to happen. And still, he can still win a sprint race, right? It's not like Lewis has been nowhere near. But yeah, I just think it's just disappointing. It's just disappointing. Haas, the other Ferrari team, the Ferrari Zero. Again, Ollie, fantastic job from him. Really happy for him. Did a great job in qualifying. Again, maximised the result for that car. Probably slightly over-delivered, I would say. But obviously, Ocon struggled. It's just such fine margins, man. It's such fine margins. It's crazy. Like, you think about it. So, this is just a little trail of what happened in qualifying. So, Hulkenberg in the Sauber got knocked out at Q1 by 16 thousandths of a second behind Liam Lawson. In Q2, Liam Lawson qualified 0.131, so just over a tenth, less than 1.5 tenths, behind Isaac Hadjar in Q2. Liam goes out, Isaac gets through. Isaac gets to P7. Like, that's the difference between who finished P7, P14, and P16. Like, it's so tight. And yeah, I think Ocon is having to adjust to a new car. Ollie's actually, as much as obviously Ocon's the more experienced driver, Behrman's got a lot more experience in this actual car. So, yeah, and I think Ollie's rapid. I do believe a lot in Ollie, of course. And yeah, new floor as well they brought for Japan. They kind of rushed it through, and it seems to have helped. Seems to have paid dividends. Back to Bahrain now, where we had the pre-season test, and we only saw long runs from Haas in pre-season testing, so it's hard to say exactly where their one lap pace will be. But I think they feel quite positive about, being in a strong place next weekend. So far so good. And again, Esteban banked the points, didn't he, in China? So, oh my God, the hay fever. Oh, come on, pull yourself together. It's only flowers. Well done, Haas. Not bad. Well done, Ollie. Good point. Have some of that. Racing bulls. Okay. The bulls that race. So, I've already glazed about Isaac. What more is there to say? 2 P7s in qualifying in a row. Held position, apart from obviously Lewis. Job done. Happy days. He's flying in that car really quick. Getting on top of the Pirellis. Unbelievable. Like, really strong. Teams need to be keeping an eye on Isaac Hadjar. He's making an impression. He's certainly, like, we're talking about how good an impression Franco Colapinto made. Like, Isaac's making a even better one, I think. Really good. Really, really good. Obviously, I guess you can say, Isaac did have a pre-season test. Colapinto didn't. But yeah, it's just showing that these youngsters are coming in and they're quick. And the old-timers on the grids, say old-timers, my age and less, the old-timers. If I was in F1, I'd be like the second oldest driver. No, I wouldn't. I'd be the third oldest, I think, behind Lewis and Fernando. Oh no, Nico as well. Fourth oldest, I think. Isn't it? Is that right? 32. Oh, don't remind me. Anyway, I digress. Liam, again, not far off Isaac in Q2, but ultimately that was enough to get knocked out. And yeah, in the race, just went for the Safety car strat didn't pay off. I don't read too much. It's hard to take much learning from what Nico did, what Liam did, etc., etc. It really is. So, yeah, remains to be seen. Isaac's doing a great job. Hopefully for Liam, he can get back up to speed. But Isaac's a tough challenge. Isaac is a tough challenge. I think I'm older than Science. I'm pretty sure I'm older than Science. He's like 30, isn't he? But well done, Racing Balls, for getting Isaac into P8. Good points. Lovely jubbly. Right, let's go for some of the teams that aren't not so much going on. Aston Martin, again, Fernando close to points. Stroll, not good. It's mad, isn't it? That how they've fallen completely off to the point now where they are probably slower than the Williams, probably slower than the Racing Bulls, probably there with the Haas. Where were they at the start of 2023? Even the end of 2023? Even the start of 24? They were decent. Damn, the fall-off's real. But hopefully Newey can be part of the solution. Fernando finally classified. He did. He's not last in the Drivers' Championship anymore because he did actually get a classification. Better late than never. Hey, better late than never. Red Bull, look, super impressive from Max and his side of the garage, absolutely, to maximise. Look, I did predict Max to win this Grand Prix for a reason, because even though that car has been tricky, Max loves Suzuka, and this car fundamentally loves Suzuka as well. So I don't think it's going to be the same in Bahrain. I think it's going to be a more difficult weekend for Verstappen and Red Bull in Bahrain, but I think this was always odds on to be a decent Grand Prix for Max and Red Bull, and so it was. And then, yeah, Yuki. Yuki, obviously, FP1, decent. Didn't really get to see a push lap from him in FP2. FP3 is not really a representative session anyway. And then qualifying, good in Q1, close to Max in Q1. And then Q2 didn't come together for him. Ends up qualifying P15. And then in this kind of race, you just can't make progress. Again, you need such a big delta. You need 8 tenths, and that's a lot to ask from Yuki in a tricky Red Bull car. So it was fine. It was okay. It wasn't bad. It was okay. I think great's a stretch, Matthew. I think great is a stretch. And I think you say Daniel did better than Liam. The problem is, Daniel, there's such different... It's hard to compare these sessions like for like, ultimately. I mean, I think probably yes. I'd probably say from what the tiny sample set we've seen, he's probably done better than Liam did, probably. But we need to see more sessions. And that's the problem as well. We'll never be able to say how good Liam could have done on his best days, because we never got the chance to see him on his best days, because they gave him 2 weekends, which is still just makes no sense to me. But there you go. Thank you, Mish, for the super chat. Did you see Liam's radio? Big power issues. I did not see that, Mish. No, so he was losing power. Interesting. I wonder to what extent. That's the thing, because you hear about power issues or, flap adjustment issues or whatever, and it's like, yeah, but it's hard to quantify how much of an actual difference did that make. And thank you, Sola, as well, for the Kiwi dollars. Do you think Red Bull have figured something out slightly with the car, or was this just Max? I think this is more to do with Suzuka, as they've always been able to do well at Suzuka. There's a reason Max has won here 4 times in a row. This circuit fundamentally aligns with the characteristics of their car, and Max is a demon around Suzuka. This is one of his strongest tracks. So maybe, Salah, maybe. But I don't think this performance, this P1, confirms that they have found out something with the car. No, I don't think it does. But time will tell. Can you make an compilation from the post-race interviews of the drivers? To be fair, I give a good every now and then. But yeah, Christian and Liam are very ummy. They a lot, didn't they? But yeah, well done, Red Bull, for giving Max the hardware to win this Grand Prix. Yuki, Shame he didn't get points. That would have been fun, but we'll see more. Mercedes, again, as good a weekend as anyone. Giving him banger. You gave him banger as well. George is driving very well. Messing around with the tyre warm-up in Q3 possibly cost him fourth. But in the race he just had... he just executed the race. He couldn't get ahead of Charles, but again, this was done in qualifying. I've been impressed with Kim. Kimi speaks very... as someone way beyond his years. Super mature, super reflective on himself, takes ownership, very honest, very real. I think Kimi's got a long future ahead of him in this sport. And to finish as close as he did to George in the end, I think Kimi did a pretty fantastic job, again as a rookie. And how high esteem I hold George Russell in. For Kimi to be anywhere close is a hell of a job. Still doing exams, I know. His mum, it was like, my mum's making me do school. My mum's making me finish off school. I was like, look, Kimmy, mate, you never know. That might come in handy. All right, one day. Finish your schooling, son. Get it done. Imagine how quick he's going to be when he's finished school, right? He can't go just back to the simulator and lock in. He's got his own work to do. Once that's done, go. You heard it here first. Not much more to say about Mercedes. Williams. Of course, Alex, I think he's in terms of form, he's been one of the strongest drivers so far this season. Points in every single race. Again, was getting a bit aggy on the radio, which again, I was like, okay. He said afterwards, he's like, that's just what I'm like on the radio. So, and he's been with that team for long enough that. But I did kind of want his race engineer to just be like, you stick to your job, we'll stick to ours, all right? Get your head down and get on with it. Because I think he needs a little bit of that. But I don't know, maybe that would just wind him up more. But that's how I would race engineer Alex. But I'm not doing that job for a reason, I suppose. Again, they didn't have an 8.8 delta to Hadjar, so I don't think they would have got past Hadjar. There would probably... Alex said there were times Hadjar was quicker. There were times he felt he was quicker, blah, blah, blah. And then, with Sainz... Look, at least Sainz had good pace. Sainz was happy with his pace. It's just qualifying completely, messed it up. So, and he wasn't far off Alex in quality either, so it's fine margins. It could have quite easily been the other way around. Sainz P9 and Alex right at the back. It could have easily gone that way, if not for a 10th or 2 in qualifying. So... ultimately, I think, and Carlos did cut the corner a few times, you're right. BW, he did. And a few of them did as well. Obviously, we saw Lando at the end. Kimi did it a few times and all. But all in all, I think Carlos is getting there. Same with Lewis, new hardware after, Lewis had never driven a Ferrari power unit and Carlos had never driven a Mercedes power unit prior to now. So that's going to take some adjustment. Carlos will get there. Of course he will. He's far too talented not to. And then finally, somehow, I've managed to talk for an hour and we've not even really gone into the McLaren stuff. That is impressive levels of chinwagging, okay? Surely that deserves a like and a comment and a rating of 5 stars, right? To get this far is crazy. Okay, I guess first thing I want to talk about is the pit lane kind of not incident really. Obviously, Lando on the radio being like, "Oh, he pushed me off," blah blah blah. That's what GP said. He's playing the game. You can't hate on Lando for that. He's got to do what he's got to do. It'd be the same if it was the other way around. He was never going to get anything for that. Of course not. But you can't fault him for trying. What I would say though is I don't really. Maybe someone in the live chat will tell me otherwise, but with that pit lane exit with Max and Lando, I don't really get what Lando was trying to do, because he was always going to go on the grass, which was always going to cause him to lose traction compared to Max being on the tarmac, on the track. I don't know what Lando was trying to do. And Marcus, like you say, Lando lost so much time doing nonsense. He was trying to mow the grass. I don't really get it, because like, what was Lando was never going to be able to go past Max. Lando was behind Max, right? He was like half alongside, right? But obviously, Max on the tarmac was going to get more traction and accelerate. He's already ahead than Lando going on the grass. All I can think, to be honest, all I can think is that Lando put his car in that position to see if he can get Max a penalty. I don't see any other way of rationalizing why Lando would do that, because you might say it's easy to say in hindsight, but I don't even think it's easy to say in hindsight. Surely Lando should have just, right, well, there's grass here. I'm not going to be able to go alongside Max, obviously, because Max is not going to move over, obviously. So if I just slide in right on Max's gearbox and stay right behind Max and try and pressure him, and you're literally right there. I know you're coming up to the S's and then you're going to fall back, but like, maybe, like, I don't know, like lunge it up the inside. I don't know, right? But like, I just don't understand why he would put his car in that position. And he almost lost it as well. Maybe he didn't, but it looked a bit sketchy. Just other than trying to bait a penalty, I don't understand why he would do that. Because then also, yeah, like you said, Marcus, he fell back, and then there was a big gap between him and Max, and he had a bit of grass on his tyres. So I don't think I don't really understand why he did it, apart from fishing for a penalty, in my opinion. But maybe I'm wrong. Then, of course, Lando Oscar. So I want to do a poll for this one, and I want to be quite specific with how I word this. So, should McLaren have asked Lando to drop behind Oscar so he could attack Max, or could try to? Should McLaren have asked Lando to drop behind Oscar so he could try to attack Max? Now, what I won't go into. I'll let you cook in the poll, right? You give me your thoughts. So they didn't do this. What actually happened was no. What they could have happened was yes. Keshbo says yes, 100%. At least try something. Rayna, if he can't get past Lando, he will not get past Max. Razor, it was worth giving a shot. Kiki for win, absolutely. Gian, yes, swap, but swap back if Piastri couldn't catch Max. Monaco says the same, yes, and if unsuccessful, swap back. Techno Andrew, Lando was never catching Max. I mean, well, he didn't catch Max. He was the one who was behind Max. Max not having DRS, but obviously Lando being in Max's dirty air. Okay, 244 of you voted, and 72% of you are saying yes, McLaren should have asked Lando to drop behind Oscar so he could try to attack Max. And 28% have said no. Now, part of me wonders, because the excuse that Andrea Stella gave for not asking Lando to drop behind so that Oscar could have a go was that this whole 8/10 delta, Oscar wasn't running within 8/10 of Max, or quicker than 8/10 within Max. I think that's a bit of a cop out. I do. I think there's a number of ways this could have played out. Lando's in a title fight, is leading the championship still now by a point. He's not going to catch and overtake Max. Like, he didn't, right? He didn't get the move done. And he didn't even really get within DRS either. He got within like 1.1 That was like the closest Lando ever got to Max. Oscar was, for good chunks of that time, within a second of Lando. And at one point, and obviously we saw Lando go over the final chicane, lock up and a bit cheeky, but Lando did release off, so I think it was fair. It wasn't the same as the Leclerc Perez one from a couple of years ago. I think if McLaren had asked Lando to reverse position, because also Stella said that Lando was managing, and that's why, as well as the 8/10 thing. I don't think Lando would have done it, because Lando, actually, what I think is that this result, outside of Lando winning the race, of course, works best for Lando's title, because I still think, even though Max won this Grand Prix, I do think over the course of the entire season, Oscar's going to be the bigger threat to the title for Lando than Max. I do. I think this track really works for the Red Bull and really works for Max in particular, but I think McLaren still do have an inherent car advantage, and Lando and Oscar aren't as good as Max, but they're still at a super, super, super high level. And I do think that actually, from a Drivers' Championship point of view, Lando finishing third with Oscar winning and Max second is worse for Lando than Lando finishing second with Oscar behind him and Max winning. And I think if McLaren asked that question to Lando, I think Lando would have said no. Now, obviously, we don't know. I could be wrong, could be completely wrong. And we don't know what's in contracts, blah, 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 right? If there's you're not allowed to... Maybe there is. Maybe there isn't. I don't know. And McLaren are very much like let them race kind of team. Obviously, McLaren Constructors feels like it should be pretty comfortable. The fact that you've only got one Red Bull once again delivering points. Mercedes are doing probably the best job. Outside, you expect Ferrari to come back, etc., etc. I don't think Lando would have given up the position. I think he would have... I don't know. But I just think it would have created a situation, basically, because that would have all then come out on the radio. Or you just get Lando being like... Radio's broken. Can't hear you. Maybe I'm wrong. 70% of you think they should have said Lando drop behind Oscar, try and attack Max, and then the assumption is then swapped back afterwards. But then there is the other point, Halita, as you point out. Would not even have this talk if McLaren would not blunder the pit stop decision. This S show started the moment they decided to not pit Lando opposite Max, but on the same lap. Now, again, Andrea Stella, speaking afterwards, did say that the reason they didn't do this is because the undercut wasn't that powerful. Which it wasn't. But for them to not even try... Look, when Oscar came out of the pit, I want to say he was just ahead of Alonso, wasn't he? Oscar, when he came out. And I believe he was about 2.5 seconds behind Tsunoda. I'm going off pure memory there from when Oscar came out of the pit. I'm sure one of you will correct me if I'm wrong in chat. So maybe it was like they couldn't see a gap to pit Lando in. But of course, as soon as McLaren pit Piastri, because the top three were running within 3 seconds, Red Bull were always going to then pit Max to cover Oscar, because Oscar is still obviously a massive factor in this race. So then to not even give the opportunity for your leading driver at the time, Lando, to try and undercut on Max and try and put the pressure on. And, as Max is coming out on colder tyres, even if there's not a massive advantage to be gained from the undercut, that one lap of, temperature in your tyres, Max coming out, could have paid dividends. And it does seem that there's not a compelling argument I can see for why they would do it that way. And perhaps BW, they should have split the tyre strategy at the start. I think they wanted to be cautious on that front. And again, I think cautious is the word. I've not seen, and I've seen Andreas Stella speak about this. I've, gone through comments and tried to understand, like, why wouldn't they just pit Lando first? Because the gap that Oscar came out into, I think would have been okay for him to come out into. I think it would have. I think he had a gap because, again, Oscar, I think, came out just ahead of Alonso. Now, maybe that would be the only reason. I'm not sure. Okay, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I didn't look it up beforehand because we're just talking about this, and I'm just thinking of it now. But like, maybe Lando would have came out in traffic, or he'd have come out right behind Tsunoda, and obviously Tsunoda's a Red Bull car, so like when Lando held up Checo in Baku last year, maybe they were concerned about that. Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, it felt like a bit of a missed opportunity. I do think that Oscar was the quicker car today in the Grand Prix. I do think that for how close he could get to Lando. You can say Lando was preserving all you like. I think Oscar was quicker in the race. I do. But Oscar fumbled qualifying. And actually, I think of all the drivers who missed the biggest opportunity this weekend, it's Oscar. Because, and I did get some information, and we're kind of going back to qualifying here. And this is once again courtesy of F1 Tempo. So this is comparing Oscar's 1:27.027 in qualifying to Lando's 1:26.995. So obviously this is P3 time for Oscar, P2 time for Lando. And this is the kind of speed trace. You can get all this on F1 Tempo. Shout out f1tempo.com. And you can see almost straight away, first sector, it's like 0.3 off. Oscar lost all his time in this first half of the lap. But even going into the final chicane, Oscar was 2.5 off of Lando, and then gained all his time, and again qualified just behind Lando on that final corner. Lando messed up that final corner, but Oscar messed up the start, because then you compare. So obviously Oscar's 0.3 off Lando here. This compares Oscar, his 1:27.027, to Max's 1:26.983. And again, you're looking at this same section, like what, 0.3 here, 0.3 here. So Oscar lost out 0.3 to both Max and Lando in that first sector. And then did purple sector 2 and 3. Oscar drove really, was quick. I think Oscar was probably the quickest car on track today, if you're negating dirty air and all these other factors. However, he blew it in qualifying. And yeah, I think that is where I think Oscar should have won this weekend. I think he had the pace to win on his birthday, and he bottled sector 1, and I think that ended up paying dividends in the end. And he's finished P3, and Max has got maximum points, and Lando's finished 3 points ahead of him. So I think actually the biggest loser this weekend was Oscar Piastri. That's what I think. But there you go. Right. Again, I've somehow found a way to talk for over an hour about the most boring race I've watched for a very, very long time. But there you go, right? You can't say I don't step up on the content front. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate you all taking the time. Don't forget, please drop a like on this stream and a comment, even if you're here on the live chat. I really appreciate if you can drop a comment down below as well, as it really helps the algorithm, helps get the pod out to the world. And thick and fast, this is the first of a triple header. We're in Bahrain this weekend. Sorry to all my Australasians and West Coast of American people, because the time zones are about to get more tricky for you and better for me. So it's not all bad. Fitbit, PP, Marcus, Rayner, Robin, Mish, Kiki, Priest, Halita, BW, James, Marquez. And also, if you are a Patreon subscriber, there's a link at the top of the description, about 10 minutes after this stream finishes, I'm going to go live on Patreon. So Halita, I know you're on Patreon. If you want to stick around, we'll have a chat on our Patreon, just while I basically do admin. So I'm going to do admin and then stream on Patreon. And if you want to join me for some admin chat with just like a handful of us in the chat, then you can by supporting me on Patreon. Thank you again. And sort it out, Suzuka. Stop running C1, C2, C3. All right? If you're going to resurface especially, listen to George. My name's Tomo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.